They left me on my birthday. Not by accident. Not in confusion. My stepmother Ingrid closed the car door with a soft click, looked straight into my eyes through the rain-blurred window, and said, "You've made your choice, Solara." Then they drove away. I stood on the empty station platform clutching one suitcase, the kind you buy secondhand. The train lights shimmered through the fog. I was 16. My father sat in the back seat, staring forward, jaw tight. He never turned around. Lucien, my stepbrother, 20 years old, confident, the golden boy, had framed me for stealing £30,000 from my father's company. I didn't even have a bank card. But Ingrid produced proof, and father believed her instantly. When their car disappeared into the rain, the silence screamed louder than any words. I remember the metallic taste of fear, the wet smell of coal and diesel, and how I whispered into the empty air, "Please don't leave me." No one answered. The station clock ticked past midnight. Happy birthday to me. That night, I slept on a wooden bench inside the station. A security guard woke me at dawn and told me to move on. His voice wasn't cruel, just tired. I walked until my shoes broke, the soles flapping against wet pavement. The world blurred into a haze of cold, hunger, and invisibility. By week 2, I was cleaning tables in a greasy cafe for food scraps and £3 a day. The owner, Mrs. Chun, never asked questions. I signed the logbook with a fake surname, Davies instead of Voss. Pride hurt less that way. Meanwhile, Ingrid posted on social media that I had run off after being caught stealing. Comments poured in from neighbors, former classmates, even teachers calling me ungrateful and troubled. Lucien replied to every post with a broken-hearted emoji, playing the devastated stepbrother perfectly. I cried into a dish towel in the cafe's back room, shoulders shaking silently so Mrs. Chen wouldn't hear. Every morning I promised myself the same thing. One day, they'll know the truth. One day, I'll make them see. 3 months later, while sketching dresses on napkins during my lunch break, a woman in a silk scarf approached my table. "You drew this?" she asked, pointing at my rough design of a gown with flowing sleeves. Her voice was cultured, curious. Her name was Dame Celeste Arnaud, owner of a tiny art restoration studio 3 streets away. She saw something in me I didn't see in myself. Potential, maybe, or just desperate hunger to create something beautiful. "You have an artist's eye," she said. "Come work for me. Learn properly. I'll pay you minimum wage and teach you everything I know." I hesitated. I was 16, broke, terrified of trusting anyone again. But her voice was gentle and firm, like a grandmother I'd never had. That night, I packed my few clothes into a plastic bag and followed her to the studio. It was the first time since the station that someone had reached out a hand instead of turning away. I cried myself to sleep that night, but for the first time in months, they were tears of relief. Celeste's studio smelled of turpentine and lavender, an odd combination that somehow worked. She taught me patience, precision, and pride in craftsmanship. "Art isn't decoration," she'd say, while showing me how to restore a damaged canvas. "It's resurrection. You take something broken and make it whole again." Under her guidance, I learned to restore paintings, to see value in the ruined, beauty in the damaged. Maybe that's why I stayed alive. She never asked about my past. She just taught me to have a future. On my 18th birthday, she gave me a leather sketchbook embossed with my initials. "Evie, fill it with the life they said you'd never have," she told me. I cried quietly that night in my tiny room above the studio, tracing the letters with my fingertips. 2 years had passed since the station. I was still alive, still fighting, still hoping that somehow, someday, I'd prove them all wrong about who I was and what I could become. When I turned 20, Celeste insisted I apply to the Design Institute in Montreal. "You're ready," she said firmly. "Stop hiding your talent." I worked days at the studio, studied nights from library books, saved every coin. The application fee alone took me 2 months to save. Meanwhile, online gossip about the runaway thief Solara Voss had faded but never fully died. I sometimes searched my own name late at night, and each result stung like a fresh bruise. Lucien was thriving in my father's company. Their smiling photos appeared in business magazines. Family business success story. Ingrid's social media captions read, "Proud of my son. He'll take our family legacy higher than ever." They looked happy, successful, like I'd never existed. I stopped checking after that. It hurt too much. Instead, I focused on my portfolio, sketching until my hands cramped. Montreal accepted me with a partial scholarship. Celeste cried when I told her.
"Go," she said.
"Go and become everything you were meant to be. Then come back and show them who you really are." At the Institute, I discovered purpose beyond survival. Fabrics, shapes, sustainability. The idea that beauty could heal the planet fascinated me. I studied under Professor Laurent, a demanding teacher who saw raw talent and pushed me relentlessly. "Good isn't good enough, Alara," he'd say. "You're capable of extraordinary." By 24, I graduated top of my class. Celeste flew in from London and stood clapping in the front row, tears streaming down her face. That night over dinner, she said, "You have to choose now. Hide or build. You can keep using Davies as your name, keep your head down, stay safe. Or you can build something under your real name and risk them finding you." I thought about it for 3 days. Then I chose to build. I registered a small fashion label under my mother's maiden name, Maison Lune. The name meant rebirth, the moon always returning after darkness. It felt right. My mother had died when I was 8, gentle and artistic, and I wanted to honor her memory with something beautiful. The first years were brutal. No investors believed in a 24-year-old with no connections and a small apartment studio. I faced constant rejection. "Come back when you have experience," they'd say. I sold handmade scarves at weekend markets to afford rent and fabric. My hands were always sore from sewing, my eyes strained from working under cheap lamps. One evening, a fashion blogger named Sienna bought one of my upcycled coats. I'd made it from discarded curtains and vintage buttons. She posted it on Instagram with the caption, "Moon made magic sparkles," and it went viral overnight. Suddenly, orders flooded in. Within a month, I was sewing through every night shift, barely sleeping, living on coffee and determination. Celeste laughed when she video called and saw my exhausted face, surrounded by fabric. "The universe finally caught up with your talent," she said. I hired 2 assistants from the homeless shelter I'd once stayed in near the cafe. If I make it, I'd promised myself years ago, they come with me. That promise mattered more than any profit. At 28, Maison Lune was featured at the Toronto Eco Fashion Gala. My models walked under silver spotlights wearing gowns stitched from discarded drapes, vintage lace, and repurposed silk. The audience gasped at the beauty of sustainable luxury. Reporters called it the future of fashion and conscious elegance. I smiled for photos but kept my real identity hidden. I signed everything E. Duval, my mother's maiden name. It felt safer that way. Safer for my family finding me before I was ready. Celeste, now 72 and retired, whispered to me backstage, "You're ready to tell your story someday. When you're strong enough to face them." I wasn't ready. Not yet. The fear still lived in my chest. The memory of that rainy station platform, the feeling of complete abandonment. But I was building toward something. Each collection, each success, was another brick in the wall protecting me. Or maybe I was building a bridge back to the confrontation I knew would eventually come. Either way, I kept designing, kept growing, kept becoming someone they'd never recognize. Then the email arrived. Subject line, "Long time, my dear."
Sender, Ingrid Voss.
My hands shook as I opened it. She wrote about regret and missing family in vague, careful language. Then came the real reason. "We've fallen on hard times. Lucien's investments went wrong, and the business is struggling. I heard through mutual friends that you're connected in fashion circles now. Perhaps you could guide us or introduce us to potential investors?" I stared at the screen until my vision blurred. 12 years. 12 years since they'd abandoned me, and not one word of apology. Not one acknowledgement of what they'd done. Only desperation now that they needed something. I felt rage burning in my chest, hot and righteous. But underneath, it was something else, a cold, calculated curiosity. They had no idea who E. Duval really was. They didn't know the abandoned daughter had become someone they now needed. I didn't reply for 2 days. I let them sit in their desperation. Then I wrote back, keeping my voice professionally distant, happy to discuss potential collaboration.
E. Duval.
Celeste raised an eyebrow when I told her my plan. Careful, child, she warned. Revenge burns both sides. I've seen it destroy people. I shook my head. I'm not after revenge. I'm after truth. They need to see what they did. They need to face the girl they threw away. But my hands shook as I hit send on the email arranging our meeting. Truth and revenge felt uncomfortably close together. We arranged to meet at the Langham Hotel in London. Neutral ground, public, expensive enough to make them feel important. I had my lawyer, Marcus, pose as my assistant. He'd review their financial documents and tell me exactly how desperate they really were. The night before the meeting, I couldn't sleep. I stood at my apartment window watching London's lights and remembered that 16-year-old girl on the station platform. I whispered to her, "We made it. We're not powerless anymore." But I still felt scared. Seeing them again meant opening old wounds. It meant confronting the people who'd betrayed me completely and seeing if I was strong enough to face them without falling apart. The hotel lobby smelled of expensive perfume and lies. I arrived early, wearing a tailored navy suit and dark sunglasses. Professional armor. Ingrid arrived first, all pearls and designer handbag, her blonde hair perfectly styled. She looked older, more lines around her mouth, tension in her shoulders. My father followed, and I barely recognized him. He'd aged terribly, shoulders slumped, suit hanging loose like he'd lost weight. The confident man I remembered was gone. Then Lucien came last. 32 now, heavier around the middle. The golden boy arrogance dimmed, but not completely gone. He still walked like someone who expected the world to move for him. "Miss Duval." Ingrid smiled, extending her hand. She looked directly at me and saw nothing. No recognition at all. "Such a pleasure to meet you. Thank you for taking this meeting." I extended my hand, cool and steady despite my racing heart. "Likewise." They pitched their failing company, Voss Industries, drowning in debt from Lucien's bad investments and mismanagement. Their voices dripped politeness, but carried naked hunger underneath. I listened, taking notes, my face carefully neutral. "We're looking for strategic partnership," Ingrid explained. "Fresh capital, new markets. Your fashion connections could open doors we've struggled to access." Lucien added, "We're family-owned, 3 generations. We just need the right guidance to turn things around." I almost laughed at the irony. Family-owned. They'd thrown away family when it was convenient. "I'll need to review your proposal thoroughly," I said, keeping my voice professionally distant. "Our firm values integrity and transparent business practices above everything else." Lucien flinched slightly at the word integrity. Just a tiny movement, but I caught it. My father remained mostly silent, occasionally nodding. He looked defeated, hollowed out. Part of me felt satisfaction seeing him brought so low. Part of me felt unexpected sadness. Later, Marcus showed me the real numbers in his hotel room office. They were drowning, debt exceeding £3 million, creditors circling, bankruptcy looming within 6 months. "They're desperate," Marcus said. "Whatever you're planning, you have leverage." I approved a symbolic partnership contract, £50,000, enough to generate press coverage, but not enough to actually save them. It was bait, and they took it eagerly. 2 weeks later, Ingrid posted on social media about their exciting collaboration with Maison Lune. Photos spread across fashion blogs. Business magazines picked up the story. Legacy company partners with rising eco-fashion star. Comments praised Ingrid's innovative thinking and resilience. I saved every article, every post, building my evidence. They were setting themselves up perfectly for the reveal I was planning. The announcement event was scheduled for the following month at a glass-walled gallery in London's fashion district. Cameras, journalists, industry leaders, everyone who mattered would be there. Celeste called me 3 days before. Are you sure about this, darling? Once you do this, there's no going back. I was sure. I'd spent 12 years rebuilding myself from nothing. They needed to see what they'd destroyed, and what I'd become despite them. I'm sure, I told her. They took everything from me. The least they can do is face the truth publicly, the same way they publicly destroyed my reputation. The night before the event, I laid out my outfit, a silver gown I designed myself, elegant and powerful. Armor made of silk and truth. The announcement event took place in a glass hall with champagne fountains and string quartet music. I arrived early, watching guests filter in, journalists, photographers, fashion industry leaders. Ingrid worked the room in a burgundy dress, laughing too loudly, trying to project confidence. My father stood in the corner, looking uncomfortable. Lucien networked aggressively, shaking hands, making promises. At exactly 7 o'clock, Ingrid took the stage. The room quieted. She opened with theatrical grace, gesturing elegantly. Thank you all for coming tonight. We're thrilled to announce this partnership with the visionary behind Maison Lune. This collaboration represents hope, second chances, and the power of innovation. She smiled at the crowd. Please help me thank the mysterious Ms. E. Duval for believing in our family business. That was my cue. I walked toward the stage slowly, removing my sunglasses as I moved. Cameras turned toward me. Whispers started, people recognizing my face from fashion magazines, wondering why I looked familiar beyond that. I climbed the steps and took the microphone from Ingrid's hand. She smiled at me, still not understanding. I looked directly at her. Then I spoke. My name isn't Duval, I said calmly into the microphone. My voice echoed through the hall. It's Alara Voss, the girl you abandoned at a train station 12 years ago. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Cameras flashed brighter. Ingrid's smile froze on her face, then crumbled. Lucien's face drained of all color. My father's hand trembled violently on his champagne glass. I continued, voice steady. When I was 16, my stepmother and stepbrother framed me for stealing 30,000 pounds. They produced false evidence. My father believed them without question and threw me out on my birthday with one suitcase. The room was completely silent except for camera clicks. Journalists were already typing on phones. This was the story of the year unfolding live. You left me at a train station in the rain. I slept on benches. I cleaned floors for food. While you told everyone I was a thief and a runaway, I was surviving on the streets. Ingrid tried to speak. There must be a misunderstanding. There isn't. I cut her off. My voice was sharp now, all the pain of 12 years behind it. You destroyed my reputation, took my family, and left me with nothing. I rebuilt my life while you spread lies. And now you're here, asking for my help because your son, I pointed at Lucien, gambled away the family fortune with bad investments. The same son who framed me to cover his own theft 12 years ago. Yes, that's right. Lucien stole that 30,000 pounds, not me. Lucien tried to speak, but his microphone wasn't on. His mouth opened and closed like a fish drowning in air. I pulled papers from my purse. I have bank statements, transaction records, everything showing Lucien's theft and his attempt to frame me. I had my lawyers investigate when you first contacted me. I looked at my father directly for the first time. You chose to believe I was capable of theft. Your own daughter. You threw me away without even listening to my side. His face crumpled. Tears ran down his cheeks. But I felt nothing except cold satisfaction. The applause started slowly, one person, then another, then the entire room. Not celebration, exactly. More like acknowledgement. Witnessing. The flashbulbs burst brighter. I turned and walked off stage, leaving them frozen there. 3 people who destroyed me, now destroyed themselves. The story was out. The truth was finally told. Justice tasted like ash in my mouth. That night, the internet exploded. Within hours, #AlaraVoss was trending across every platform. Headlines screamed, Abandoned teen becomes fashion mogul, exposes family live. Video clips from the event went viral. My speech, their shocked faces, the moment of revelation. Comments poured in by thousands. Some called it poetic justice. Others criticized me for public humiliation. Most just wanted more details, begging for interviews for my full story. I stayed quiet. Celeste had advised me earlier. Let truth speak for itself. Don't feed the chaos with more words. She was right. The facts spoke louder than any explanation I could give. Ingrid released a statement through her lawyers claiming miscommunication and family misunderstanding. Lucien vanished from social media entirely, deleting all his accounts. My father remained silent. But I knew silence was his language, it always had been. He'd stayed silent when Ingrid and Lucien accused me. He'd stayed silent driving away from that station. Silence was his weapon and his shield. 3 days later, journalists had dug up everything. Court records showing no charges were ever filed against me, interviews with Mrs. Chun from the cafe confirming I'd worked there, Celeste's testimony about finding me destitute. The truth unraveled their lies completely. Paparazzi camped outside Maison Lune headquarters. I stayed hidden behind tinted windows, watching from my office as news vans lined the street. My assistant showed me clips of Ingrid's tearful television interview. She sat on a morning talk show, dabbing at dry eyes with a tissue. We were trying to protect the family business, she said, voice shaking with manufactured emotion. There were misunderstandings on all sides. Alara was troubled acting out. We thought we were doing what was best. I switched the television off. My assistant asked carefully, "Do you want to sue them? For defamation? You'd have an excellent case." I considered it. But what would I gain? Money I didn't need? More attention I didn't want? No, I said finally. They've already sentenced themselves. Every lie they tell now just makes them look worse. Truth doesn't need force. It just needs time and sunlight. Celeste had taught me that while restoring damaged paintings, you can't force art back together. You have to be patient, gentle, let the truth of the original emerge slowly. The same applied here. They were destroying themselves with every desperate attempt to salvage their image. 4 days after the event, a journalist leaked documents proving Lucien had embezzled from the company, the same crime he'd blamed on me years ago. Bank records, forged signatures, testimony from former employees. Screenshots flooded the internet. Ingrid's reputation collapsed overnight. Voss Industries' remaining investors pulled out immediately. The company declared bankruptcy within a week. I watched it all unfold in silence, torn between anger and unexpected sadness. Revenge didn't taste sweet. It tasted heavy, complicated, like biting into fruit and finding it rotten inside. Celeste found me in my office late one night, sketching alone in the dark. She turned on a light and sat beside me. "Justice isn't joy, my dear," she said gently. "It's balance. You've balanced the scales. The question is, what do you do now?" I didn't have an answer. I'd spent 12 years imagining this moment, them exposed, destroyed, suffering like they'd made me suffer. Now it had happened, and I just felt tired, empty, like I'd been holding my breath for years and finally exhaled, only to find my lungs still hurt. "I don't know," I whispered. I thought I'd feel victorious, but I just feel sad. My father called 2 weeks later. I stared at his name on my phone screen for 3 rings before answering. His voice was shaky, older than I remembered. "Alara, please may we talk? Just the two of us." I almost said no, almost hung up. But curiosity and something else, maybe hope for closure, made me agree. We met at a quiet cafe in a park, far from cameras and journalists. He looked terrible. His once sharp hair was now completely silver. His hands trembled around his teacup. Deep lines carved his face. "I should have protected you," he said without preamble. His voice cracked. "I let her turn me against you. I was weak. I believed lies because they were easier than confronting the truth about my new wife and stepson." The words pierced deeper than I expected. I'd imagined this conversation so many times, but reality felt different.
Raw.
Why now? I asked softly. Why reach out now, after everything? He looked directly at me for the first time. Because I've lost everything else. The business, the house, my reputation. Lucien fled to Spain to avoid fraud charges. Ingrid served me with divorce papers yesterday. Apparently, I'm no longer useful to her. She's taking everything in the settlement, he continued. I have nothing left except the truth I should have faced 12 years ago. I wronged you terribly. I threw away my daughter to keep peace with a woman who was using me. I chose comfort over truth, and I've paid for it every day since. I listened quietly, feeling both pity and detachment. This broken man barely resembled the father I'd known, the confident businessman who'd seemed so sure of everything. I don't need your money, he said, eyes wet with tears. I know you're successful now. I'm not here to ask for anything except, I just needed to see you, to tell you I'm sorry face to face, to tell you that you were right and I was wrong and I'll regret it until I die. For a long time, neither of us spoke. I watched other cafe patrons around us, living their normal lives, unaware of this small, painful moment unfolding. Then I said what I'd been holding inside for 12 years. You left me with nothing, Father. Absolutely nothing. But I built something anyway. I built a life, a career, a name for myself. And I did it without you. He nodded slowly, tears running down his weathered cheeks. And that's why you're stronger than all of us. You survived what would have destroyed anyone else. You became something extraordinary. We sat together for another hour, talking carefully around the edges of our shared pain. He told me about his regrets, how he'd known, deep down, that I was innocent but had been too cowardly to admit it. How Ingrid had manipulated him with fears about the business, about his reputation. I was weak, he repeated. But you were never weak. Even at 16, you were stronger than I ever was. When we finally parted, he hugged me awkwardly. I didn't hug back, but I didn't pull away either. As I walked to my car, I felt something loosening in my chest. Not forgiveness, that would take much longer if it ever came. But maybe the beginning of letting go. That night, I couldn't sleep. Rain tapped against my windows, sounding like that night 12 years ago. I kept hearing Ingrid's voice from that train station. You've made your choice, Solara. But I realized something now. She'd been wrong. I had made a choice. They'd made the choice for me. They'd chosen cruelty, lies, convenience over family. The next week, a tabloid published photos of Ingrid outside a charity shelter. The headline read, Fallen Society Lady Seeks Help. She sat alone on the steps, makeup washed away, designer clothes replaced with simple jeans. Pride completely gone. I stared at the photo for a long time, waiting to feel satisfaction. But all I felt was a strange, hollow ache. I asked my driver to take me near that shelter one evening. I don't know why, morbid curiosity maybe, or some instinct toward closure. Through the car window, I saw her sitting exactly where the photo had captured her. She looked small, defeated, human in a way I'd never seen her before. For a long moment, I wanted to roll down the glass and ask her why. Why she'd been so cruel. Why she'd destroyed a 16-year-old girl to protect her son. Why any of it had been necessary. But then she looked up and saw me. Recognition flickered in her eyes, followed by shame so profound it was almost painful to witness. I didn't speak. I only nodded. Not in greeting or forgiveness, but in acknowledgement. We'd both survived our different kinds of destruction. Then I told my driver to go. As we pulled away, I didn't look back. At Maison Lune's 5th anniversary gala, I announced a new initiative, Solari Atelier, a program training women from shelters in fashion design and business skills. Everyone deserves a second chance, I told the audience of journalists and industry leaders. But not everyone gets one. If we have the power to give chances to people who've been dismissed and abandoned, we have the responsibility to do it. The audience stood and applauded. Celeste, sitting in the front row, smiled with such pride that tears pricked my eyes. That night felt different than the revenge I'd imagined. This felt like building something meaningful from ashes, turning pain into purpose instead of just inflicting more pain. Weeks later, a handwritten letter arrived at my office. Shaky penmanship, simple words. Ilara, I am sorry. I don't expect forgiveness. I don't deserve it. But I wish you peace and every happiness. You earned it through suffering I helped cause. Ingrid, I placed the letter in a drawer with other artifacts from this chapter of my life. Old photos, newspaper clippings, the bankruptcy notice from Voss Industries. Some wounds don't need replies. They just need endings. Still, I whispered to the empty office, I hope you find peace too. Months passed into a new normal. My father began volunteering at Solari Atelier, quietly mending buttons and sweeping floors. He never asked for anything, no money, no public acknowledgement, no relationship beyond this small, careful connection. One evening as we closed the studio, he said, Your mother would have loved this. What you've built here. Tears stung my eyes. You think so? I know so, he said firmly. You carry her heart, her kindness, her creativity, not her hurt or mine. That night, for the first time in 12 years, I slept without nightmares. I returned once more to that train station where they'd abandoned me. It looked smaller now, cleaner, almost kind in afternoon sunlight. I stood on the same platform where 16-year-old me had cried in the rain. I closed my eyes and whispered, You made it. We made it. A breeze passed through, gentle like a touch. I imagined my mother's voice saying what Celeste had taught me. Let it go, darling. Forgiveness didn't erase the past, but it rewrote the ending. As I walked away, sunlight broke through the clouds, the kind of light that feels like a promise. I'd been abandoned, destroyed, left for dead. But I'd survived. Built something beautiful from ruins. Sometimes the people who abandon you give you the greatest gift, the chance to discover exactly how strong you really are.